Hello, this is Judge Jennifer Brunner, and with me, Judge John O'Donnell, and we are together doing the Achieving Justice series that we've been working on in my Ohio Supreme Court campaign. Judge John O'Donnell is also running for a seat on the Ohio Supreme Court. He is currently a trial judge in the Common Pleas Court in Cuyahoga County, and we are so excited to have with us today two candidates from who are running for the 10th District Court of Appeals. Judge O'Donnell, let me have you go ahead and introduce these folks and say hello to everybody in this video. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Judge Brunner, and thank you so much for having me on today. I can't wait to get to know these two candidates a little bit more. First, we're going to be talking today to Judge Terri Jamison of the Domestic Relations Juvenile Division of the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas, who's running for the 10th District Court of Appeals in Franklin County. And second, I'm also excited to hear from her future colleague on the 10th District Court of Appeals, Mike Mentel, who is running for a seat on that same court. So I think I'll start with Judge Jamison, if you don't mind, Mike. Judge Jamison, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the 10th District Court of Appeals?
I'm currently running for the 10th District Court of Appeals because I understand the importance of that court. Many times the Court of Appeals is the court of last resort for the ordinary person. If there's no unique question of law, no conflict between districts, your case might not be heard at the Supreme Court level. And I think it's really important to have people that are balanced, that are fair, that are honest on that court, reviewing decisions from the trial level and looking at them objectively, researching them well. And I think I bring that to the court.
That's great. Thank you, Judge Jamison. And Mike Mentel, you've got a very storied career. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the 10th District Court of Appeals?
Well, thank you, Judge Brunner and Judge O'Donnell, and thank you, Jennifer, for putting these podcasts together. I think they're very helpful to inform the voter and let them know who the candidates are and what we stand for in terms of being on the bench. I've been a lifelong resident of Columbus, and I have had a very, I think, very productive and a proud career in public service. Briefly, I've started out as a Franklin County public defender, even in law school, and was in the municipal division there for several years. I then moved over to the Ohio EPA and became an attorney that started a new program there that dealt with some of you may recall, the Superfund programs and cleanups of the most hazardous and toxic waste sites in the country. Well, there were some of those in Ohio as well. I eventually became the supervising attorney over that program, worked with the Ohio Attorney General's office to get corrupt polluters to not only pay civilly, but some of them actually to spend time in jail because of their environmental crimes. But from there, I moved over and stayed in the environmental and renewable energy area in private practice. I also have been corporate counsel to one of the largest Midwest engineering environmental firms and served there for several years, as well as then being in private practice. And currently I'm a partner at Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister, where I continue my practice in environmental and in regulatory compliance and renewable energy. I've had several trial experience. Clearly, I've been a trial attorney at the criminal level, and now do more of the, if you want to call it, more of some of the, it's the only word that comes to mind, but more of the complex aspects of renewable energy litigation and offering my practice experience there. As I mentioned, I've been in practice for 32 years. Part of that included, though, 3 terms on the Columbus City Council. And I was very grateful to the citizens of Columbus for returning me for 3 terms. I also served as the president of Columbus City Council during my last term. And I thought that brought very valuable experience as well, not only in terms of the years of my practice and engaged in both trial and trial work and regulatory practice and compliance. But being part of a body where you have to demonstrate collegiality and temperament, and that had to go on. Even though it's a legislative body, you're making policy, you have to get along with those other policymakers, especially when it's a bipartisan situation, which I began with when I started my tenure on council. So that's a little bit about me. And again, I'm very, very proud that the voters of Franklin County held high regard for me during the primary to move me forward to this general election. I look forward to being part of the general election.
Great, thank you so much.
That's an impressive resume, and it leads me to ask this question of Judge Jamison. Judge, you've been on the trial court for nearly 2 full terms at this point, and obviously the Court of Appeals is a little bit of a different dynamic, but do you see your trial court and previous experience as being of benefit to you on the Court of Appeals?
Yes, I do. Judge O'Donnell, thank you for that question. Coming from West Virginia, you know, I started my career with the Department of Welfare and Social Services. I was an eligibility worker and a fraud investigator for them. I moved over to become a coal miner. I worked underground, proud union member of United Mine Workers of America. When they started to have layoffs, I moved here to Columbus. I was fortunate enough to land in the insurance industry where I owned and operated my own multi-line insurance business for 16 years. So I have experience as a small business owner and understand that there will be business litigation that comes before the 10th district. Businesses are just like marriages, they dissolve, and you have to divide the asset and debt of businesses as well as we do dealing with divorces, dissolutions, civil protection orders, juvenile delinquency cases, abuse, neglect, dependency cases. And I like to call our court the family court, where whatever happens to your family happens in our court except adoptions. So in my private practice, or let me just back up to law school. When I was in law school, I had some of the most interesting internships. I interned with the Civil Rights Section of the Attorney General's Office. I externed with the Bureau of State Hearings, where I heard appeals of Medicaid, OWF, and food stamp benefit appeals. I was an intern for the Public Defender's Office in the Common Pleas section, and I did a brief stint as a municipal attorney for the Public Defender's Office. I soon went back to my entrepreneurial roots and started my own practice, where I focused on juvenile, domestic, probate, and criminal practice. So I've had jury trials, not only in Franklin County, but in various counties around the state. I had office site in Richland County, in Springfield, in Clark County, and I had an office site here in Franklin County. So I've been around the state practicing. I've not just practiced in Franklin County. I've also been a hearing officer for the Bureau of State for Unemployment Review Compensation Commission, where I heard appeals for unemployment benefits. And in doing that, I've become very familiar with administrative practice. I've represented individuals before the Racing Commission here in Ohio. And on our court, which is different than some of the multi-judge courts, we actually function as one body. We have a monthly meeting where we make decisions on all of our local rules. We all use the same local rules. We all use the same processes. It gives ease to the litigants that are coming before the court because we are a public service agency and we want the public to be serviced well, and you want them to have the same local rules. I've seen multi-judge courts where each judge has their own local rules and each attorney has to look and see what they have to do before each judge. So I have that experience. We are also bipartisan court. We have an administrative judge that's of one party and a juvenile lead judge that's of the other. So we work together as a bipartisan court.
That reminds me, Judge Jamison and Mike, the 10th District, where I currently sit, is the only court that handles the bulk of the state administrative appeals, because state agencies, including the Court of Claims that are situs right in Franklin County, their appeals some go through the Common Pleas Court, some come directly to the 10th District Court of Appeals. Can you kind of talk a little bit about your experience and how that relates to this specialized work that only the 10th District does?
Well, I'll let Mike go first.
Thank you, Your Honor. That great question, Judge Brunner. Yes, I think it's a two-part. First, having actually practiced in front of some of those regulatory agencies, I have had the experience. The most notable is the Environmental Review Appeals Commission, also used to be called the Environmental Review Board, back when my hair was still there and it was a little darker. But having said that, that is a direct appeal from any decisions made by that commission to the 10th District Court of Appeals. But in addition, by and through the ERAC, there's also the Bureau of Underground Storage Tank Regulations, State Fire Marshal regulations. There are multifaceted groups of commissions that would take up quite a bit of time here that do have direct appeal to the 10th District Court of Appeals. And that experience as well makes it very valuable, I think, to me at least, into what I would bring to the court. The second thing is, how do these regulations, how does all this come together? I think with a legislative background that I have, I think it lends itself to being able to look at how the administrative complexities work, not only in context with what are the decisions on administrative law, or how are, for example, the executive branch, what is the latitude that they have to interpret their own regulations, but how do they form? Where are the state level going through the Joint Committee on Agency Rule Review, JCAR as it's called, going through those processes. But also look at the municipalities that surround Columbus, the 16 plus municipalities and townships. And let's take a look at Columbus. Well, they have they form their own city, through their city code, they have their own regulatory issues. And they also form through just by the BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals, or how these work through with appeals that would initially go to a Common Pleas, but then come to the 10th District Court of Appeals. How are all of these issues, how do they come together? The experience of understanding how and why these come together, why the policy decisions are made in formulating them, help, I think, in making a fair, just determination by applying the law to those facts to get to the conclusion. And I think having that type of background and having that exposure, not only to state, but in a municipal fashion, helps, I think, offer the formation of better decisions, helps offer the experience that I think would lend itself to the Court of Appeals.
Great.
And I bring to the Court of Appeals the administrative experience as well. As a hearing officer, I was the initial officer making the findings of fact, determining credibility, accepting evidence, ruling on objections before it actually would go to the trial level. But one thing I would like to bring up that goes to the 10th District that's near and dear to my heart is the writ of mandamus and the writ of prohibition and the election appeals. And those things that go before the 10th District can make the difference between a candidate being on the ballot or a candidate not being on the ballot. And bringing personal experience with writing writ of mandamus to that court. And also knowing that on our court, the family court, we write all of our decisions. There are no jury trials. All the trials are to the bench. So in our divorces, we are dissolving businesses. We are breaking up family assets. So we have a wide range of equitable remedies that we can do through our court, that if you have only practiced in the general division or the municipal court, you don't know what all the equitable remedies are that we can do through our court. And I think there are times when judges on appellate courts forget that domestic relations court and juvenile court have different missions than the law. Everything that we do is not a legal remedy. There are equitable remedies, and we do more in our remedies are more forced on the fairness of the decision than it is the legality of the decision. And so you have to remember that when you're reviewing a different type of decisions.
I think John, she might be trying to give me a hint. I don't know.
Well, I just want you to remember, we have equity. And when you do all of your decisions the same, they can't be done the same. What you do with a family, you can't do with a business. And that was one of the things that I learned early when I got on the bench in 13. When you're looking at a family that's coming before you, we have the statutory guidelines of how long it's supposed to take. But when you're looking at a family that needs to go through counseling, you're looking at a family that has its own small business, and the impact that a divorce has on that small business has to be considered, because child support has to be taken care of, spousal support has to be taken care of. So you're more focused on bringing the people to a place where they can really make the decision themselves. I always tell them when they come before me, if I have to write it, you're gonna hate it. You wanna take some ownership of this decision. Bring it together, do what you can to solve your own problem. And if there's a legal question, let me answer the legal question. But you determine what kind of parenting time you want. Determine how you want to see your business function after this divorce is over. Because when the court goes away, you have to have a decision that's workable for the family. It has to be something they can implement themselves, something that they buy into. And when we review those decisions at an appellate level, we have to remember it's not an abuse of discretion for the judge to give that kind of latitude to the couple to work through after their divorce.
Judge Jamison, you've been talking about the difference between legal and equitable remedies, which is one thing, but it seems to me for judges, it is important to be equitable and to demonstrate equity in the ordinary term of fairness, or what is right and wrong. So that brings me to a question that I wanted to ask you. Do you have an opinion on whether it is more important for a judge to have legal knowledge, wisdom, or patience?
I think patience especially in our particular court, is a key element, and it's essential to have. You need wisdom, though, to know, have I let patience run long enough? So you need all three of those, but I put patience at the top in the family court, because we're dealing with children that have been removed from their households because of abuse or neglect, or they might be removed because they're delinquent, and we're putting them in a 90-day program, a 6-month program. So there has to be some patience when you're working with families that you don't have to have when you're dividing just assets. Our families come to us at a crisis point. And anyone that's coming to court, I believe they're at a crisis point. And a judge that doesn't have patience, a judge that doesn't exercise wisdom, and doesn't look back on their own experiences and maybe some of the failures or frailties that they have, and have some empathy for the people that stand before them, is not going to be a good judge. You have to have empathy in this job.
So Mike, kind of taking that idea, I was so interested in your background that you had started a legal program at Our Lady of Guadalupe. And while the Court of Appeals is a little bit academic, not right there looking into the eyes of witnesses in a trial and that sort of thing, I look at the constituent work you've done on city council, your own legal practice, your public defender work. And so these things that Judge Jamison was talking about, kind of talk to me about that and how you see that's all going to play out on the Court of Appeals.
Great question. Thank you. I think if using when establishing the Our Lady of Guadalupe legal clinic about 5 years ago, one of the things, and I said this early on, is you have to meet people where they are. I would say some people looked at that saying, well, wait a minute, we're not a trial court. This is the Court of Appeals. We don't deal with people. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Those decisions are going to greatly impact, whether it be the company that's employing people or a person individually, whether it be civilly or criminally. You have to know, and you've had to have met people where they are and bring that comprehension with you. I think one of the reasons I set that clinic up was because of the dire need. I had the opportunity to see that. I was privileged to chair for the Catholic Diocese of Columbus. It's actually 23 county. I chaired the Bishop's Annual Appeal for 3 years of that. One of the facilities that was beneficial from the campaign was the Our Lady of Guadalupe Center. I got to visit that several times. That I went there, I sat there, I talked with people, and I learned what the needs were and went out and dealt with them. You take this to the Court of Appeals with you. You take these experiences, and if I could even blend it to Judge O'Donnell's question to Judge Jamison. When you talk about wisdom, you talk about experience, or you talk about the patience. I think we've all demonstrated through, and what our resume shows, we have the intellectual wherewithal and legal knowledge to handle this job, and actually then some with our backgrounds and experience. But bringing the other side of that, bringing the ability to bring that equity, that fairness that Judge Jamison mentioned, bringing that into the decision-making process is paramount. I think that then requires the patience. That's the temperament. That's the ability to listen to what counsel says during oral argument. Make sure you do your research and read the briefs and follow follow that, if you want to call it, that type of an approach. And I think it leads to those, I think it leads to a much better, equitable, fair decision in within the confines, certainly of the law, but you have to look at the law because it is organic. I think if we look at it any other way, I think we're not adhering to what was established under our constitutions, Ohio and U.S. I adhere to one thing though that's kind of, I think, is that I try to adhere to a lot, and it's Abraham Lincoln once said, "It's better to remain silent and thought a fool than speak and remove all doubt." Part of that requires the patience and the wisdom to understand that whatever somebody might think of you versus making a outward and statement that extends beyond what you need to do in terms of a judicial temperament, in terms of the ability to make that ruling and listen closely to get to the right conclusion. So if I feel that, Judge Brunner, to your question, I think bringing those experiences, bringing that Our Lady of Guadalupe is among those from the public defender's office, among those the citizens that live in areas where somebody illegally dumped at midnight and contaminated their groundwater or what have you. you bring those. You have to meet people where they are. We're not so disjointed or dislocated from the citizens that we don't bring those experiences to the Court of Appeals.
And you know, Jennifer, you mentioned that it's an academic court. I serve on the Capital University Law School Board of Counselors, and I'm also on Franklin University's Board of Advisors for Global Healthcare Education. And I taught at Daymar College, which is a junior college that helps, and it seems to attract people that are more on the re-entry level. And this fall semester, I'll be teaching at Cap Law. I am an academic. I love learning. And I think I bring that to the Court of Appeals as well. Somebody that loves to research, looks for the latest case law. I do it on every decision, regardless of whether I think it's something that I've written before. I go back and I'll look back where I was, but I always look to see, has there been a new decision in this case that's going to affect these people differently? Because you want to know the most recent law, and you want to know how it's impacting the families that come before you. So, and I usually make a habit of going through my docket for the week and reading all the motions and checking up on what's going on before that week comes. I bring that kind of organization that I've already started doing to the 10th district. That won't be something I'll have to learn to do, reading the briefs and preparing, because I love to question attorneys when they're standing in front of me. I do it all the time now. And a well-prepared attorney in front of the Court of Appeals, I think the judge needs to be equally as prepared. If they've done their research, they've written their brief, they're there for their argument, you should know what their argument is. You should be prepared to question why they feel that law is applicable to them and not to their detriment. And I love doing that. I can't wait for the opportunity, if the voters of Franklin County will have me for the third time. This is my third election, so if they'll have me for the third time, I looked at the history of Franklin County. This is the 217th year that Franklin County has been established, and they've only had 2 minority judges on that court. I want to be number 3. I want this to be my third run, and I want to be the third African-American to sit proudly on that court.
That's fantastic.
May I just add something to what Judge Jamison said? The approach to the oral argument. I had several cases before the 10th district and have argued. And one of the things that I took away from that was learning that the manner in which the judges at that time were inquiring of me and questioning me on my case was that of essentially looking at me as, if you will, the expert on that case for my side of the brief. And looking at it in that regard, obviously probing and questioning what, the argument to get to the best determination they can get to. But it was, I think I took away from that, and I would continue to take away, and talking with others that have practiced before the Court of Appeals, is that these attorneys are bringing their best arguments. They're bringing their experience with that case. They're bringing that. And we need to also take advantage of their, if you want to call it that, being the experts on the case, both sides of the, both sides of the argument. I think that's something that is also, does not bear the entirety of listening to and making a determination, but respecting the fact, as I think Judge Jamison articulated, that we need to take into account and read their briefs, know their argument, and listen to their argument, and really probe and really kind of comb that out to make the best determination.
That's great. Judge O'Donnell, do you want to ask the final question? Looks like we're getting close to a half an hour, and probably you want to wrap it up.
Well, Judge Jamison and Mike, I am glad to have spent some time with you today. I've heard 2 impressive resumes and qualifications for the court you're seeking. you will remember that in the past, I have had the chance to meet you each year at the Franklin County Judicial Salute, where there's a long receiving line of about 300 or 400 handshakes. Obviously, that can't be done in today's environment, but I see that the two of you have adapted, and I believe Judge Brunner and I have too. But this was your opportunity to speak about your candidacy, and I just want to make sure, Judge Jamison, have we missed anything that you think is important that people should know?
Well, I think it's, I just want to say this to the voters. Thank you for the 2 times you have elected me. I have remained involved in the community, Judge O'Donnell. I sit on numerous panels. I think part of my job as a judge is to educate the public about what we do, procedure to get to our court, where we are, what we cover, what jurisdiction we have over what impacts their life. And I've remained very involved in my community, and I do that regularly. I thank the voters. You have put your confidence in me twice already, and I hope that I have fulfilled the obligation and done what you wanted me to do as a representative of you on the court. I'm asking you as the voters to give me the opportunity to move to the 10th district, to take the expertise that I've gained and take it there where I can also impact Franklin County on a wider level. The Court of Appeals decisions are precedent for the entire county, not for just the one case that we wrote. So if you find that I'm fair, you think I'm honest, you think I'm equitable, and I haven't let you down so far, I'm asking for your vote November 3rd, 2020. This will be my 3rd time. 3rd time is going to be a charm this time. And I thank you so much, voters, for the confidence you put in me.
And Mike, same question to you.
Well, first, thank you again for hosting us on this podcast and giving us the opportunity to speak directly to the voters and explaining why we feel our candidacies are the best to suit the 10th District Court of Appeals. I am grateful in the past as well of having had the city of Columbus vote me in for 3 terms as a representative on the largest legislative body in the state of Ohio for the largest city in the state at the municipal level. And I appreciate what the voters of Franklin County in their votes for me and during the primary, overwhelmingly, given all the circumstances we've had with COVID and the other circumstances with voting. I would like to encourage, though, everyone to, when they're looking at not only at this race, but at your races, both you, Judge Brunner and Judge O'Donnell, judges are important this year. Mm-hmm. From the top all the way down to the bottom, if you want to use that kind of phraseology, from up the ballot to down the ballot. Know who is running. Judges couldn't be any more important to elect this year than ever. That's not to say that other races are not important. I'm not trying to characterize them as not being. But Judge Jamison touched on some of the, for example, some of the issues that could arise dealing with voting rights, dealing with what happens with anything going on with an election or anybody being allowed to be on the ballot. Just all sorts of issues that can come before this court. I ask anyone listening that will listen and is tuning into this podcast, look at your judges, vote down ballot. Do not ignore them, because the judges will be there long after any other situations occur, especially if they're coming out of the executive branch. We need to be able to have the competency, not only the experience, but as you mentioned, Judge O'Donnell, you have to have patience and that wisdom to be able to handle what will be coming forward and make the right, equitable, fair, just decision. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity that you have given me to share my thoughts, share my candidacy. And if anybody is interested, they can go to michaelmentel.com That's my webpage, and there's more additional information and background on me. I thank you again. This has been a tremendous opportunity, and I greatly appreciate it.
Well, I for one, am so grateful to Judge O'Donnell for joining me today. I think this has been a really special discussion. It's the first time we've had two of us questioning two folks at the same time. And this has been so interesting and added such great diversity of thought and strength of conversation. And so I really appreciate also Judge Jamison and Mike Mentel that you were able to join us today. This has been Achieving Justice, and this is again, Judge O'Donnell is running for the Ohio Supreme Court, as well as myself. And we will be among the four of us pushing this out over social media. So thank you again so much for being with us today. And I know Judge O'Donnell and I could speak for him, wish you the very best in the election. And it's going to be quick. It's less than 100 days now. So take care, and hopefully we'll see you sometime on the trail or thereafter.
Thank you.
Thank you.